Hi, everyone. Welcome to Managing Stress and Pressure Secondary. My name is Jessie Martin. I'm a mental health specialist at Heritage Middle School. And I'm partnered with...
I'm Noelle Spriestersbaugh. I'm a mental health specialist at Westerville South High School.
Hey guys, my name is
So we
Adam
are
Brooks.
learning these virtual platforms as well, and we really ask for your flexibility as we navigate that tonight. Remember that these sessions are recorded for future use. During this session, you will only be able to see Noelle and I. We are the presenters during this time, and our slides. We will not be able to see you or anyone's face or hear you speaking, but you can reach out to us through the chat. The way you do that is there's a Q&A feature. You'll have the chance to send us any kind of chat or question. We do have Adam Rex, who will introduce in just a little bit, kind of monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to check in through the Q&A feature. But welcome tonight. We're so glad that you're here, and we know that you're here because you love your kids, and guess what? We do too, and that's why we're here. So we're going to jump into the presentation.
So we're going to go ahead and take a poll, and it should pop up right on your screen. And it should say, managing stress, the current main stressor for my child is. You guys might recognize this. We sent this out to anyone who signed up to be a part of this, to get some ideas of what you guys were seeing at home, and then kind of consolidated some of those answers. And we're just going to give you guys a minute to kind of answer what you are seeing, the current main stressor for your child, what you're seeing at home. And so as it looks like we're getting most of our answers, I'm seeing a lot of organizational time management, virtual schoolwork, motivation, feeling disconnected, kind of across the board, which makes sense. These are the answers you guys sent to us. And it's definitely mirroring what we're seeing too. So we also want to do, we also want to talk a little bit about what you've tried to do to help your child deal with stress and anxiety. Some of the things that you guys are trying at home to help support them as they're going through some of this. Great. Talking with them is huge, making a student feel heard. And as you can see, these are, again, what we heard back from you guys. Helping people feel organized, make a schedule, taking breaks. Not a lot of takers on the breathing techniques, which we're going to make you practice later. So it's a new gained skill. Okay. So talking with them and taking breaks, which we know is incredibly important. We're going to talk a little bit later about kind of the impact of always being in front of a screen. So those breaks, especially those breaks from the screen, can be really powerful. So when I was an adolescent, I was stressed out by and/or anxious about. I'm going to talk about your guys' experience. What did you see as big stressors or big things on your plate when you were your kid's age? We have social situations, taking tests, maintaining good grades, balancing a big, busy schedule. It's really interesting to reflect back at a pre-COVID time, let alone a little bit longer when we were in our kids' shoes, but it is, I think it is helpful to remember some of the things that kind of weighed heavy on us, and how looking back, we have such perspective that helps us realize that it wasn't as big as it felt like, but when you're experiencing it, when we experience things as adolescents, it can feel really big. And so our final quick question is, school stress has been impacted by COVID in this way. How have you seen school stress impacted? Scheduling is difficult. lack of skills to manage virtual weekends or virtual weeks, lack of social opportunities, being anxious about getting sick. And these are all things that we're hearing from students in general that are a little bit more specific to COVID. So things that we wouldn't necessarily have experienced when we were in their shoes. Yeah, the lack of social opportunities is huge. If I have to pick an upside, one feedback point I'm getting from students is I don't hear that kids aren't getting enough sleep quite as often. Or if they're not getting enough sleep, it's for a different reason. It's not the scheduling kind of being packed in. Okay, so yeah, that lack of social opportunities. And we're going to touch on that briefly in just some ways that we can be creative or some ways that we see that impacting too. Okay.
So here's some of the key points that we're going to try to focus on today with talking about managing stress and pressure. We're going to be talking about our brain's response to stress because that's where the stress originates. We're going to be talking about benefits of stress because believe it or not, there are some. We're going to be also walking through some strategies that you can use, that you can teach your child, listening skills, ways that we self-talk to ourselves, mindfulness, but then we're also going to touch on the impact of COVID, as we know that has added a whole new dimension to stress.
So if you guys hang around us long enough, you know we like to geek out over the brain. And I think one of the reasons why it's really important to understand how the brain interacts with stress or anxiety and depression is we get a better sense of what's going on in a quantifiable or accountable or easy to see way. And it's not just a sense of something or a feeling for it to be validated through a chemical response or a physiological response that your body is processing. For some students, it kind of makes it feel a little more real and takes away a little bit of that shame when they're having experience like this. We know that chemicals that are impacted are our dose. So dopamine, it's kind of hope or that, yes, I've got it. Like when you accomplish something that you worked really hard towards, or even little bursts of dopamine, like when you're scrolling through your phone, when you flick, that clicking hormone that's released that makes that pleasurable is actually dopamine, which is why we get really used to this. And it's sometimes hard to put our phone down as young people or even as adults. It's because our brain is reinforcing that. Oxytocin is that trust and social bonding. So when we cuddle, when we hug, the chemicals that are released when we engage in those social interactions or when we feel validated is that oxytocin. And right now, I will say that a lot of our students' oxytocin levels are probably a little bit lower. In part because I don't know if you guys have been in a high school recently or a middle school pre-COVID, but there is a lot of hugging or arm around each other. There's a lot of really encouraging, positive touching that students thrive on. And that has been taken away. Not only has the hugging or that touch been taken away, closeness has been taken away. I will say I have been blown away by how respectful and wonderful our students have been. They have really trying to recognize and abide by the 6 feet rule. It's not always possible, but they're really trying. But that means they've got this huge gap. And then they have a physical barrier across their mouth. And it impacts us, whether or not we're conscious of it. It does impact how we feel, how we interact with others, and can be kind of draining or isolating, even in person, let alone when we're virtual. Serotonin, when you feel really important. When you walk into a room and you know everyone's looking at you, that's all serotonin. Serotonin is really important in helping to control sleep. It is a big one for feeling like you're competent or you're good at something, and feeling like it ties in with that oxytocin with like other people appreciate you for what you're good at. And this is one that's impacted. We see it impacted anyways during the winter months because sunlight can also boost serotonin, and or exposure to sunlight can boost serotonin. So when we have less sunlight or we're out in the sun less because we're inside a building, that can be impacted. It's one of the reasons we will encourage your kids to get out during the winter as much as possible, or as much as weather allows, especially on our virtual weeks when we have a little more flexibility with that. And then endorphins. So endorphins, that's that runner high. That's that you're playing a sport and your team scores or something happens, and that feeling of joy and whatnot. Those are the endorphins that are released when we're watching a really good movie or have a really good cry. Our bodies release endorphins that make us feel really good. So we were talking earlier about stress and worry and anxiety can actually be helpful. And that's in part because worrying is a part of being human. Being worried about things is important because it means we care and we're engaged. It can also motivate us it can make us react quicker, or it can make us stronger when we respond to something. You all have the example of the parent who lifts the car off the kid or off the whatever, right? Like we have a short stress response that's not prolonged can give us different capabilities to do things that help us handle stressful situations or sometimes dangerous situations. It also accuses us that something might be wrong or that something is dangerous. And so if I start really worrying about something and I'm not sure why it bugs me, if I examine it, I might realize I don't feel safe or this situation's maybe not okay. So it's important to listen to your instincts too. And then worrying can motivate you to take action. So a really good example for this is if you're worried about getting a sunburn, you might put on sunscreen lotion, right? So we might take action to prevent the thing we're worried about. If we are worried about running out of gas, we might go and fill up our car tank. Things like that. We can take action. If we're worried about failing a test, we might study a little harder. Stress in small doses and small manageable doses and not too many at once can really be a positive thing.
So it kind of comes to, we know that it's positive and it's natural and it's part of the human experience. But when should I worry about their worry? When is it becoming a point of where we need to take action or help our child through that type of worry? What we really want to think about, is it impacting their ability to function, whether it's their ability to function at school, whether it's their ability to make and maintain friends, whether it's their emotional regulation and their worries are impacting that. So when it's really starting to impact their daily function, that's when maybe we should worry about their worries. So if worries seem excessive, these are some tips that you can use with your kids. You can assign a time during the day to discuss the worries. A lot of times if students or kids are feeling overwhelmed or anxious, it can really be their thoughts all day. And it's always at the tip of their mind. It's constant and it keeps going in circles. So if you assign a time, I would recommend afternoon, early evening, not too close to bedtime, where you can just sit down, dedicate that time just to whatever worries they have. It can help alleviate the feeling of worry every other day. You're kind of taking the control back over the worry. Another thing you can do is collect evidence to support or disprove the thought. So many of us feel that our thoughts are fact, and they are not. They are just our thoughts. So if we can find the evidence to whether we support that thought, that it's true, or disprove that thought that this is actually not true at all, can really help decrease worries. And with that, you can teach your child to debate the for and against those thoughts to see if they're real or if it's just a fleeting thought that's not based in anything.
Okay, so with that, we are going to take a quick body break, and then we are going to welcome Adam Rex, who has been keeping us on track. And he's been also monitoring questions in the chat. So if there is anything that pops up there, he's either responding or bringing it up to the group. So for our body break, since we didn't have anybody pick breathing, we're going to do a breathing exercise. So I want everyone to get comfortable wherever you're sitting or standing, whatever's a comfortable position. And I want you to breathe in, hold it, and let go. And this time when you breathe in, I want you to stretch your arms out to the side, hold it, and I want you to pull as hard as you can backwards and let go. And this time when you breathe in, I want you to pull your arms all the way up and bend back and let go. And one last breath to settle into our chair or into your feet. Breathe in and let go. As you're letting go, really, I want you to pay attention to how your shoulders feel or your jaw feels. I'm finding right now with all the craziness of the world, my jaw and shoulders are tighter than I realize until I pay attention to them. So pay attention to those and just kind of make a conscious effort to let those drop a little bit during the next couple minutes while we introduce Adam.
Hey guys, my name is Adam Rex. I'm a social worker in the district. I actually work with all 3 high schools at the credit recovery program called EOS. I've been monitoring the chat, not a whole lot of action so far. We're pretty early on in the presentation. The only question that's been brought up is people aren't seeing our videos, like our faces when we're on there. And we're working on that on our end. But I do know that the sound is good. So we'll continue to work on that. You are missing some smiling faces. So we'll keep working on that on our end. And if you have other questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A.
All right, so we discussed the brain and we talked about when worries can feel excessive. So now we're going to kind of dive into some different supports when stress and anxiety might need that extra bump, which I know is why you guys are all here. You're looking for that support for your child at home. So we're going to talk about some different ways to do that.
Sorry, trying to unmute. So some strategies to be a better listener for your kid. And you guys know a lot of these. We know because we hear stories from students and we know that our students know you care. And one way that students really receive that is by being listened to. And so some reminders for yourself is to just practice that non-judgmental approach, just kind of taking the information, even when you know that you need to have a conversation because it's not safe or it's not okay, whatever the behavior was or the thoughts were that they were thinking about. Sometimes just listening and validating, and an easy kind of life hack to do that is just repeat back exactly what you heard. It helps them feel heard. There's no judgment to it. And they'll be like, yeah. Or sometimes they might even be like, no, not quite. And then they'll clarify themselves. So don't feel like you have to have the answer. Don't feel like you have to fix it. Just listen in that non-judgmental way. Give your undivided attention. I know one rule we have in my house is we put our phones down. Whenever we're talking, we always put our phones down. You're not allowed to look at your phone. And this is good for us, but it's also good for us modeling to our kids, showing them how to have an engaged conversation. So if you are in a place where you're waiting for an important call or you're expecting a text that you have to respond to, it's okay to say, listen, I really want to pay attention and I really want to be here for you and present in this conversation. So can we have it in 5 minutes when I'm able to get this taken care of? Or if you're doing something like cleaning or making dinner or something like that, same thing. You can say, I'd love to talk to you through. And then if maybe we can talk about it again later when we're able to sit down and I'm able to give you my full attention. Allow for silence. It's okay. It is okay if they're quiet for a second. Some of our students are processors and they need a minute to come up with what they want to say. I definitely know that I struggle with this sometimes. I want to jump in, try to put words out there and be like, so are you feeling, or do you mean, or something like that. But when we give them the space to come up with the words themselves, it's a really powerful thing. And it just leans into that them feeling like you really care about what they have to say and are really listening. A big one is underlying like the real message. What are they really saying? If I have a student who's going off because their friend is such a liar and they said that they weren't going to go to the party and then they showed up and you didn't go because you didn't think you wanted to go. And like, they're going off and off. Listen for the underlying thing. They sound hurt. You sound really betrayed. Like, that really sucks. You're really hurt by this. Listening for the underlying thing, because sometimes if you try to argue with the logic, that's not really the problem. I know with my husband, this is a big thing. When I'm rushing around and I'm snapping and I'm like, and I'm running late and this and this. If he tries to like argue with the semantics or tries to fix it, I'm like, ugh, and I get like even more escalated. But if he's just like, I am so sorry you're stressed. How can I help? or I am so sorry today was crappy. Like, I just feel heard, validated, and it kind of calms me down enough that I'm ready to talk in a different way. And then, like I said in the beginning, just using those restatements. You're clarifying, you're making them feel heard. It is such a wonderful tool. And as much as it might feel a little awkward for you, I promise you, you would be shocked by how often people don't realize you're doing it. When you literally just repeat back what the person said, people are like, yeah, like, you're really listening. And you're like, yeah, I just repeated the exact same thing. But it does make people feel heard. It makes me feel heard. I like it when people do it for me.
I would just like to add to, with being a better listener, I think we're, living in a world right now where we don't have a lot of the answers, and we want to be problem solvers for our kids. We want to be problem solvers for each other, but there's a lot of unknowns and uncertainty right now, and that's okay. But still just giving them that space to voice their concerns. I think what Noelle said about offering an apology when, I'm sorry that's really hard. I apologize for everything because it's such a validating thing for someone to, feel for me, and, or I offer the apology. I'm sorry that things are not going the way you thought they would, can be really affirming. So we're going to talk a little bit about self-talk. And self-talk is that dialogue that we constantly have in our head. A lot of times when we start to get worry and stress, that self-talk can be negative, and it's our internal script. So if it's negative, it might impact our mood, our actions, our behaviors, our interactions with others. So we need to start looking at self-talk by our example and by what our students are saying to themselves. So these are just some examples of ways to flip it around. So, student says, I'm so stupid. Well, instead, let's start thinking, how am I smart? Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. How can we promote those strengths more often, point them out? Other examples on the screen, it's all my fault. Maybe we need to look at it a different way, that what factors caused this to happen? Maybe I was just one chain in that whole link of actions. A huge component to me when I think about self-talk is the way that you can model it out loud at home in front of your kids. So the more that you can do positive self-talk outside, as you're going through things, and maybe you make a mistake at home, or you mess up a recipe at dinner, and you can be like, oh man, I totally messed that up. But that's okay. I can learn from it, or maybe I'll make this instead. And you just saying it out loud and they hear that can really help with their internal dialogue.
Some physical ways to calm our body down, we're going to talk about. And the reason why we want to calm our bodies down is by calming down our bodies, by calming down that physiological response to stress, to anxiety. We allow the frontal lobe, or the thinking part of our brain, to be active. When we are in panic, we are not thinking clearly. I'm sure you guys can think of an example of a time you were just reacting and it was kind of crisis. And then afterwards, you're like, why did I do that? Why did I respond that way? And there's a physiological reason. There's a reason in your body that your brain was not able to activate all of your IQ. It was not able to be as smart as you actually are, because when we're highly stressed, we go to that base part of the brain that keeps us safe in crisis. So it's really important to have different skills or different ways to calm down your body so that we can access all of our intelligence, and so that we can be successful in settings like a schoolroom during a test, or when we're put on the spot with something. To know how to calm our bodies down is a really important skill to have in high school, in middle school, but all throughout life as well. So taking deep breaths, like 4 deep breaths. If you inhale for 4, hold it for 2, exhale for 4. I like to have students do this on their hand, so 5 breaths is what we recommend. So I have them inhale for 4, hold it for 2, exhale for 4, and have them do it all the way up. And one of the reasons I like the hand is because you always have this with you. And it's a nice reminder. You're also experiencing physical touch, which we know when we're able to focus on our 5 senses, it activates a part of our brain that helps to calm our body down. So if you hear mindfulness thrown around, like this next one, this can serve as a moment of mindfulness by just engaging in focusing on the feel of your finger, tracing your finger, the sounds of what's your breath coming in and out, what you can smell in the room around you, kind of the lines of your fingers going up and down. By really focusing on that breathing moment, you've also engaged in a moment of mindfulness. Just moving. And please, if you're able to do it and the weather is nice, get outside. Getting that sunshine to boost serotonin, getting a break from the screen, which right now, because students are doing so much of their work virtually on their remote week, we know that the amount of screen time, if you add up what they're doing for school and what they're doing to decompress, if they use their phone or if they use a computer for it, is a lot. And so any activity you can do that involves movement and a break from a screen is just really helpful in resetting your brain so that it can be ready to take in new information. Meditating is a really wonderful skill as well. There's some really great apps for this. The Calm app is one that I use a lot with students and some of my staff members. There's a lot of guided meditations or visualizations on YouTube, online for free. Try some out, find someone with a voice that you like. That is often a good way to feel engaged. Maybe you and your student can pick one together. I have a staff member right now that is doing a meditation with his 11-year-old son. Every day that is their post-dinner practice. And they just do a 5-minute meditation together and they just sit there and it's a moment of connecting and a moment of practicing the skill. And it's been one of his favorite experiences during all this pandemic and things. And it started with him saying, hey, I'm really stressed out. I'm seeing behaviors from my kid. What's something I can practice? And he chose meditation and it's been great for them.
So something else that you can use with your kiddos is something daily self-care. And the acronym is GRAPES. And actually, we do have a handout that we can send out to you after the presentation so that you have a hard copy of it. But the G is for gratitude. Science has shown that expressing gratitude can really boost your mood and improve relationships and make you feel better. You know, just by saying, being grateful to someone else can make you feel better. But thinking about even the small things that we can be grateful for, you know, it could be that we have electricity to, you know, charge our Chromebooks and our phones. It could be that we have food on the table. You could do it just very simply. What are we grateful for today? The next one, R, is relaxation. That's a lot of what Noelle was just talking about. And an example was during our body break with the breathing, but breathing, muscle relaxation, all of those things are great for our students. A is accomplishment. And I really feel like this one is overlooked a lot. And when I'm talking about accomplishments, I'm talking about very small things. It's on the remote weeks. Do they get up, brush their teeth, change their clothes, and eat breakfast? Are they still practicing their routine? I don't know about you guys, but sometimes on the weekends, if I don't get up and get moving on those things, half the day can go by and I don't feel accomplished. So really just those small accomplishments can add up and feel like you got a lot done in a day. Also with accomplishments, we can think about their schedule while they're home. You know, do they have a routine to get their schoolwork done during those remote weeks? That's important too. P is for pleasure. Are there fun activities? And I know that a lot of students' activities that they enjoyed pre-COVID are difficult now. So what are ways that they can do those fun activities in the environment that we're in? It's been beautiful lately, so getting outside has been very helpful for people. Are there ways, if they like to play games, are there ways that they can do that virtually with their friends? Are there certain books or magazines that they enjoy reading? So that's important every day to spend some time doing something pleasurable. Exercise, that's pretty self-explanatory. Being physical, walking, jogging, getting outside, dancing, whatever that exercise might be, but definitely getting your body moving is important. And the last one is social. Again, very difficult during this time. How can we make it work even though COVID exists? Can we meet outside? Can we have Google Meets with our friends? Can we FaceTime? What are the different ways that we can meet that social component every day to feel connected?
So now we're going to take another body break. I want everyone, if you have been sitting sitting, I want you to stand up and just clap or snap your fingers together. Just get a little bit of sound, like that clicking sound that can be really satisfying. And just stand up, stretch, grab a drink of water, do whatever your body needs right here. And while we do that, we're going to check in with Adam on any questions in the chat.
So we've had some good ones. The chat's been pretty active since we last checked in. Some questions about, and I'll open this one up to you guys because I'd be interested to hear your input. Someone said that their daughter was, pretty self-motivated, pretty organized typically, but lately with school being from home, she's seeing they need some help, and they're wondering what are some good strategies for not overstepping boundaries and making her child more frustrated when they see her start to feel like this. So the answer I had said was just ask her. Like, if you notice that she's feeling frustrated, ask her if she wants some help. Maybe if she'd like to hear from you, because a lot of times my son, I know, doesn't want to hear what I have to say. But I'd be interested to hear if either of you guys had some good input.
I would like to also comment on one of the comments that were on there about walking and having conversations with your kids. That is a great time when you are including movement with your discussions. Kids tend to be more open, and especially if you're walking side by side instead of, facing your kiddo at home. When you walk side by side, it can feel less challenging or alarming. And so walking side by side to have those conversations is a great way. So now we're going to talk about impacts of COVID and how it has maybe impact stress and some things that you can think about to try to keep in mind to lower the stress of your kiddo at home. So the first thing you want to kind of think about is, what is the difference for your child in this current state? And how has your family had to adjust? We've all had to make different accommodations and different changes and adjustments. And even those minor changes can have a huge impact on how our kiddos are functioning, how they're feeling, if they're feeling safe and all their needs are being met. So having those conversations could be really helpful with your kids. How are they feeling about some of these changes? So really thinking about the adjustments that you've had to make. Another huge one, and something that I have to remind myself often, is what can you control? Because there are lots of things right now that are out of our control, as you've probably been experiencing these last few months. So if you can spend time focusing your energy on what you can do. So I know that every day I can wear my mask. I have it with me. I can wear my mask. I can wash my hands. I can sanitize. I can practice social distancing. I can avoid certain social situations or crowded places, and I can have my family follow those same rules. Those are things I can control over this COVID thing. I can't control what our country's doing. I can't control what my neighbor's doing. I can't control the state of the world. So if I can just narrow it down to the things that I can control, it makes me feel less stressed about the whole situation. Another thing to keep in mind, if possible, is maybe we need to change or lower our expectations for our kids. What is the priority right now? And I know that a lot of districts, I'm sure you guys have seen, our superintendent sent something out, Hilliard superintendent, lots of different schools are saying curriculum is not the priority right now. It's social emotional health for all of our students. So really prioritizing, are all these little homework assignments important, or is studying for this big point test important, right? So trying to figure out all of those things and changing some of those expectations right now can help lower that anxiety. A stressed brain is not a focused brain. So we just have to give grace, patience, and time. The last thing to keep in mind during all of this is to be mindful of what is said around your kids. Their brains are different than ours. Their brains are not fully developed, and they cannot process the information the same way adult brains can. Even if you're having a conversation with a friend or a spouse and they can overhear that, they might not be able to interpret it the correct way, and it can cause undue stress. So just being mindful of what is being discussed around your kids, because they still do have underdeveloped brains is really important.
So some of the resources, we mentioned the GRAPES handout that we will send out to email addresses of people who signed up for this. Reframing thought and action steps. And then we pulled some of this from the 9 things every parent with an anxious child should try. And then obviously right now we have a lot of really great resources out there for COVID-19 for schools and families and students. I don't know if you guys have been to Ohio's COVID-19 page, but it has some really great resources for parents there too. We are also good resources. If you have any questions or would like more ideas or would even just like to talk through what's going on for you and come up with some resources or tools that might be helpful for your family, for your child, we are always happy to do that. We have our email addresses here. You can feel free to reach out to us and just let us know if there's a way we can support you. We love being a part of the Westerville community, and it is important to us that our students and their families know that we are here as a resource, and we really do want to help. So thank you for having us today.
Yeah, if you have any questions, now is the time. You know, if there's specific questions or something that we didn't address during this time, we would be happy to open that up for you guys.